journey backwards. Madam Speaker, one of the most offensive aspects of this bill is the assumption that politicians know better than the people. At every turn, this bill removes power from citizens and transfers to politicians. The people are told they can no longer be trusted to directly elect their president. Politicians will decide. Really? The people are told they must wait longer before they can hold leaders accountable through elections. Madam Speaker, the people of Zarasekwa on 23 August 2023 gave me a 5-year mandate which expires on 3rd September 2028. There are people within my party whom I beat in the primary elections who desire to be members of Parliament for Zarasekwa. There are people from ZANU-PF whom I defeated in the general elections that also desires to be members of Parliament for Zarasekwa. Everybody should be given the opportunity at the expiry of the 5-year term to go. If the people still want Mshoriwa as the MP for Zarasekwa, they should vote me back. It is wrong, Madam Speaker, for Mshoriwa to stand to be here and participate in extending my own contract. Yet my bosses, the people of Zarasekwa, do not know. You are aware, Madam Speaker, that the Honorable Minister has told us that we will not go to a referendum. Because in his wisdom and in his view, he thinks it is not necessary. I'm not going to comment too much on this because it's a matter that is too sub judice. But I believe that anything that tends to benefit me, to benefit all of us here in Parliament, to benefit the current president, it needs the people of Zimbabwe to have their say. And they can only do that, Madam Speaker, through a referendum. If the people say it's okay, then it is fine. Not the few of us here, the beneficiaries of the people that casted their vote for us, to simply say, no, let's extend our term. Madam Speaker, the people today are being told through this CAB3 that constitutional safeguards are obstacles. Politicians have the right to decide. And I believe, Madam Speaker, that it is arrogance of its highest order. It is a constitutional betrayal. Zimbabwe, Madam Speaker, does not reside in Parliament. The sovereignty of Zimbabwe resides in its people. We are merely temporal custodians of authority entrusted to us by the citizens, temporarily for a 5-year period. We do not own Zimbabwe, Madam Speaker. We do not own the Constitution. We do not own the future. Madam Speaker, every generation of politicians faces a temptation. The temptation to believe that because they possess numbers today, they think they possess legitimacy forever. History teaches us otherwise, Madam Speaker. Parliamentary majority come and go. Political parties, they rise and fall. But constitutions should endure. This is why constitutions must never be manipulated to suit a temporal interest of those occupying public office. Madam Speaker, the Constitution must outlive politicians. The Constitution must restrain politicians. The Minister, the Honorable Minister of Justice, speaks of stability. I found that argument deeply troubling. Throughout history, attacks on democracy have always been justified in the name of stability. The answer to every democratic demand has been, we need stability. The answer to every demand for accountability has been, we need stability. The answer to every demand for citizens' participation has been, we need stability. But true stability does not come from extending political power. True stability comes from constitutional legitimacy. True stability comes from free and fair elections. True stability comes from accountable leadership. True stability comes from citizens believing that the rules apply equally to everyone. Madam Speaker, Zimbabwe has many pressing problems. Citizens are struggling to survive. Young people are searching for opportunities. Business are battling economic uncertainty. Public service requires urgent attention. Yet the government's constitutional priority is not solving these challenges. Its priority is altering the rules of politics. That tells us everything we need to know, Madam Speaker. There is a profound difference between constitutional reform and constitutional manipulation. Constitutional reform strengthens democracy. Constitutional manipulation strengthens politicians. Constitutional reform empowers citizens. Constitutional manipulation empowers us, office holders. Constitutional reform expands accountability. Constitutional manipulation reduces accountability. CAB3, Madam Speaker, falls squarely into the second category of constitutional manipulation. Madam Speaker, it's not very long ago, just a few years ago, 2017, Zimbabweans were promised a new dispensation. They were promised democratic renewal. They were promised constitutionalism. They were promised respect for institutions. Yet today we are being asked to support amendments that undermine the very constitutional principles that Zimbabwe were promised would be protected. That tragedy, Madam Speaker, is not merely that the government has brought this bill. The tragedy is that some who once defended constitutionalism are now defending constitutional erosion. Some who once demanded limits on power now seek to expand power. Many of us will know, at the tail end of the former president, Robert Mugabe's reign, how many of the people who are sitting on my right were calling for accountability, but today are actually singing a different hymn. History, Madam Speaker, will record those contradictions. Future generation will ask, what we did when the Constitution was placed under threat? And I speak this to all honorable members. Future generation will ask whether we defended the People's Charter or we surrendered it. They will ask whether we defended the democracy or we weakened it. My answer today is clear, and I say this to the people of Zvarasekwa. I oppose this CAB3 in all its clauses. I refuse to participate in the dismantling of the democratic gains secured by the Zimbabweans.
Honorable Mshoriwa, you are left with 5 minutes.
Thank you. I refuse, Madam Speaker, to endorse constitutional changes that weaken citizen sovereignty. I refuse to support amendments that place political interests above national interests. This bill represents a retreat from constitutional democracy. It represents a retreat from accountability. Madam Speaker, in 2017, and all of us will recall what transpired. We woke one morning. We saw on our national television men in army uniform addressing us. They told us that the president is safe. We want to deal with the criminals surrounding the president. Madam Speaker,
point of order.
Order, Honorable Mshoriwa. What is your point of order?
Atichaziva Madam Speaker kuti tiri kudebata bill here kana dzave dzimwe nyaya.
Mazvita Honorable. Ndizvozvo Honorable Mshoriwa debate bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wanted to remind this august house. The second republic, what uttered the second republic, Madam Speaker, started on that day. The expectation of the Zimbabwean people was that never again shall we have a few to manipulate the president. I want to tell you this, Madam Speaker, before I sit down. The current president came into the government in 1980.
Honorable Mshoriwa, I urge you to debate the bill, not about the current president.
No, but Madam Speaker, the bill seeks to extend the tenure of the current president and current parliament. So I'm actually within my purview, and I just wanted to put this on record, Madam Speaker.
Point of order.
Order, Honorable Mshoriwa. What is your point of order?
Madam Speaker, ma'am, kana munhu asingadi kudya nguruve iye pachake ngaarikutaura kuti vanhu vese havadyi nguruve ngaangoregera kuuya 2028 ogara kumba kwake. Ndatenda.
Honorable Mshoriwa, endelea mbele.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the point I wanted to drive before I sit down was to simply say that President Emerson Mnangagwa has actually had a very commendable history in government. As a minister in various ministries, he has actually had the opportunity to become the Speaker of Parliament in the fifth Parliament. In fact, he was one of the best speakers that Zimbabwe has actually had.
Unfortunately, your time is up, Honorable Mshoriwa.
Point of privilege. Point of privilege. Point of privilege, Madam Speaker. I have a point of privilege.
Order.
Point of privilege. I have a point of privilege, Madam
Point
Speaker.
of privilege, Honorable.
My point of privilege, Madam Speaker, is that I humbly request that you give him 5 more minutes to wrap up his debate. Thank you very much.
I second.
Is there an objection?
Yes. Objection. Without debate,
There is an objection, Honorable Makumire. Next to take the floor is Honorable W. Sham.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am, for letting me add my voice to this auspicious debate. Madam Speaker, ma'am, what I'll do, I'll begin by going back in history. Now, the first president of Ghana and the architect of Pan-Africanism, Kwame Nkrumah, once observed that, and I'll quote, "The forces that unite us are intrinsic and greater than the superimposed influences that keep us apart." Madam Speaker, ma'am, he regarded freedom from colonial domination as an inherent right of all peoples. Political independence was valuable, not simply because it brought economic benefits, but, Madam Speaker, because it restored human dignity and sovereignty. Madam Speaker, those words, I find them resonating profoundly in our current debate. The words of President Kwame Nkrumah remind us that the future of Zimbabwe must be determined by the aspirations of Zimbabweans themselves. By Zimbabweans themselves, not by external pressures, foreign interests, or imported narratives. Madam Speaker, the Constitution of Zimbabwe must remain an expression of our sovereignty. It must remain an expression of our development priorities and our collective will as a people. Now, I'll try, Madam Speaker, and contextualize what I see happening within this debate. Some of the voices, some of the forces that impose illegal sanctions on our economy, sponsored regime change agendas, and has spent decades attempting to influence Zimbabwe's political destiny, are today seeking to lecture Zimbabwe on constitutional democracy. We have heard that narrative before, Madam Speaker, and Zimbabwe will not be misled. We are very clear on what we want to see being achieved in this country. Madam Speaker, this bill is a democracy in its most authentic form. It is democracy in its most authentic form. Why? Because it's homegrown. It's participatory. We saw people participating and people driven. In his report, the Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs was very clear. The Chairman of Portfolio Committee on Legal Affairs, Honorable Zobo, was also very clear. 537,102 Zimbabweans made their voices heard in support of Constitutional Amendment number 3 bill. Madam Speaker, that is not the voice of a selective few. It is the unmistakable voice of the people of Zimbabwe. Those who claim to champion democracy should, at the very least, respect the democratic choices of Zimbabweans. Madam Speaker, I'll go back to Kwame Nkrumah. He defined neo-colonialism as a state that is independent on paper, but whose economy, system of governance, policy decisions are still controlled from outside. Now, Madam Speaker, neocolonialism no longer manifests itself under the banner of foreign occupation. It operates through economic dependency, digital domination, cultural influence, and external control over strategic national resources. It arrives, Madam Speaker, through press statements, NGO reports, and funding conditions. Madam Speaker, it seeks to dictate sovereign nations which constitutional choices are acceptable and which are not. It amplifies a small but a vocal minority while disregarding the overwhelming majority of citizens who would have spoken through established democratic processes, like we saw what happened throughout the process on the life of this debate. Madam Speaker, ma'am, Zimbabwe is no longer a colony. We are free. We do what we want to do. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I'm emphasizing this point because democracy is not the elevation of the loudest voices. It is the respect of the will of the majority. We cannot and will not accept a standard that diminishes the voice of our people in favor of externally driven narratives. Not today, not ever. Zimbabwe will never be a colony again. At its core, Madam Speaker, ma'am, this debate is about self-determination. Zimbabwe's liberation struggle was not merely a fight for territorial independence. It was a struggle for the right of Zimbabweans to determine their own political, economic, and constitutional future. Thousands of sons and daughters of this nation took up arms because they rejected a system in which decisions about Zimbabwe made elsewhere and imposed upon its people. That founding principle, Madam Speaker, ma'am, remains as relevant today as it was at independence in 1980. The destiny of Zimbabwe must be shaped by Zimbabweans themselves. The spirit of self-determination was what drove the people of Zimbabwe to take up arms so they can freely determine their political status, pursue their economic, social, and cultural development, and make decisions about their own lives without external interference. Madam Speaker, ma'am, it is against that backdrop that we must view this bill as the Honorable Minister of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, Honorable Ziyambe aptly observed, and I want to quote him: "To do otherwise would be to elevate constitutional rigidity above national development and the sovereign will of the people." I close quote. Madam Speaker, ma'am, that statement captures the essence of constitutionalism in a democratic society. Constitutions, like he emphasized, are not museum pieces frozen in time. They are living instruments designed to respond to the evolving needs, aspirations, and realities of a nation. Where refinement is necessary to strengthen functionality, coherence, and effective governance, Parliament has both the constitutional authority and the democratic responsibility to act, and we are acting. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the true measure of constitutional fidelity lies not in resisting change for its own sake, but in ensuring that the Constitution continues to serve the people for whom it was created. And under the leadership of His Excellency, Comrade Emerson Dambuzo Mnangagwa, Zimbabwe has made significant strides in reshaping international perceptions, moving from being viewed by some as a pariah state to being increasingly recognized as an attractive destination for investment, for trade, and diplomatic engagement. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I will now try and underscore a point which I think we sometimes talk about without making a proper analysis. Let's take the Gwai Shangani Dam, which I feel provides a compelling illustration of why extending the electoral cycle is necessary to safeguard national development projects from recurring political disruptions. This project, Madam Speaker, ma'am, was first conceived in 1912, and construction commenced many decades later. Today, dam has reached approximately 97% overall completion, while the pipeline that will ultimately supply water to Bulawayo is about 70% complete. Now, this demonstrates, Madam Speaker, ma'am, the intrinsic and enduring need for water security among the people of Bulawayo and the surrounding regions. However, the project's implementation has repeatedly been hindered by electoral cycles and associated fiscal uncertainties. In 2013, Madam Speaker, ma'am, budget realignment resulted in the demobilization of contractors. Between 2018 and 2019, funding gaps and delays in the tendering process for the pipeline further slowed progress. Moreover, Madam Speaker, ma'am, the 6-month periods before and after elections often bring cautionary freezes on major project payments and expenditure commitments, resulting, Madam Speaker, ma'am, in stalled implementation. Consequently, the pipeline remained stuck at approximately 50% completion in 2023 and only advanced to 70% by mid-2026. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the economic consequences of these delays are significant. Government estimates indicate that each year of delay costs approximately, Madam Speaker, ma'am, 40 million US dollars, excluding the wider losses arising from foregone economic activity in Bulawayo, where maybe they could have been doing some other things, but they cannot do it. Escalating contract costs, inflation-related adjustments, and missed opportunities for industrial growth and investment. These costs, Madam Speaker, ma'am, overrun ultimately and place an additional burden on the taxpayer. This bill is thinking about the people. Madam Speaker, ma'am, President Mnangagwa's philosophy that Nika Inovakwa Nevenevayo is more than a slogan. It is a declaration of national agency and collective responsibility. It affirms, Madam Speaker, ma'am, that sustainable development is not imported, but conceived, driven, and owned by the people themselves. Through this philosophy, Madam Speaker, ma'am, Zimbabwe has embraced a culture of self-determination, resilience, and national responsibility, proving that the destiny of our nation lies not in the hands of others, but in the industry, ingenuity, and collective efforts
Honorable
of
Shabu, we
Zimbabweans
are left
themselves.
with 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, let us look and ask ourselves, who benefits when those national development projects are interrupted every 5 years by destabilizing election seasons? It's not the farmer waiting for irrigation. It's not the young entrepreneur in Chegutu. And most definitely not the widow in Binga. Beneficiaries are those forces that do not want to see Zimbabwe succeed. Madam Speaker, ma'am, many honorable members who spoke before me gave examples of South Africa and Botswana, to mention but a few, as respected stable nations that elect their presidents through parliament. Yet, when Zimbabwe proposes the same model, suddenly it is authoritarian. Those are double standards, peddling the neo-colonialist mentality. That is neo-colonialism wearing a democracy costume. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the people of Zimbabwe understood this principle clearly. The 54,231 citizens who attended public hearings across all 10 provinces recognized a simple constitutional reality. If a parliament possesses the authority to remove a president through impeachment, it can equally be entrusted with the responsibility of electing a president. The logic is sound, Madam Speaker, ma'am. The president exists. Most importantly, the people have spoken. History, Madam Speaker, will record what this parliament did when Zimbabwe's sovereign future hung in the balance. History will record whether, Madam Speaker, we stood with our people or whether we compromised on the fundamental principle of sovereignty. Zimbabwe is not for sale. Zimbabwe is open for business and closed to external interference. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, I speak today with the authority of the people of Chekut East constituency, who sent me to this august house to represent their interests. Their message was unequivocal. They support this bill totally. I therefore stand not only in my individual capacity, but as the voice of thousands of constituents who believe that this legislation is in the best interest of our nation and its future development. Madam Speaker, Constitutional Amendment number 3 bill defends the gains of our liberation struggle. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Shamu. Honorable Njanji.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand today representing the good people of Mansowe Central. I rise to add my voice in support of Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3. Madam Speaker, at the heart of this debate is the need to strengthen the capacity of the presidency to effectively drive Zimbabwe's development agenda and deliver on the aspirations of our people. Madam Speaker, the presidency is not merely an office. It is the institution entrusted with providing national leadership, policy direction, and oversight of government programs. As we pursue Vision 2030, the demands placed upon the executive continue to grow in complexity and scope. It is therefore imperative that our constitutional framework evolves to support efficient governance, policy implementation, and national development. Madam Speaker, under the leadership of His Excellency President Dr. Emerson Dambudzo Mnangagwa, Zimbabwe has witnessed significant economic transformation. We have seen major investments in mining, agriculture, energy, infrastructure, and manufacturing. Road rehabilitation programs, dam construction, rural industrialization initiatives, innovation hubs, and increased foreign investment attested to a nation on the move. Madam Speaker, the Second Republic has championed a development philosophy that leaves no one and no place behind. Communities that were once marginalized are now benefiting from roads, clinics, schools, irrigation schemes, and digital connectivity. These achievements require strong coordination and consistent leadership at the highest level of government. Madam Speaker, this bill seeks to ensure institutional stability, continuity, effectiveness in governance. Strong institutions anchored on capable leadership create confidence, attract investment, and accelerate economic growth. Madam Speaker, constitutional amendments should always serve the national interest. In this case, the proposed changes are designed to enhance the ability of government to deliver results and maintain the momentum of economic progress already being witnessed across the country. Madam Speaker, as Parliament today, our duty is to support measures that advance national development, strengthen governance, and improve the welfare of our citizens. Constitutional Amendment number 3 presents such an opportunity. Madam Speaker, I therefore urge this House to support the bill and contribute to the continued modernization, stability, and prosperity of our great nation. So I submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Njanji, Honorable Esmoyo,
ndolevua kachipinga ichi chine nakompa uri nani ndiise muvono wanga nga hei bhili yoisiwaho ntswa ndotoma nga zva gender commission ndichiamba uri gender ndandichikotama uri isiwa kazimbabwe women rights idhiimele inti ngauri ndiyone yoritusawo savo rine vafumakadzi uri huve navulalo dzinduni apa kahavavo mali wawo ropi wavo inofi marriage act inakoitisa uri ridzule nga mulalo navo rine vafumakadzi roima parliament ngauri rikotusiwa nga gender commission vasadzi rivokwanisa udhiimelela rinti ravona uri futi na vana vatuku vachisidzana hei gender commission yova thuso nga manda ngauri vana vavasidzana avachatangana nazvo kondawo sazvava vachitangana nazvo husina anokoimelela vana vachisidzana ndikolevuwa nga zvoitiwawo nga gender commission navo rine rihone henepa parliament savarangapanda ikotwa yada yathusa vafumakadzi uri vakwanise uri vadhiimelele isiyone navo rine vafumakadzi rarisadokwanisa uva richikoima richikoyamba sazvezvi ngauri rava richikokweya mara rapiwa ndila nga hei gender commission so ativoni uchiteya uri gender commission upfi iyoima nga zimbabwe women rights aiime inti samadzulelo yavayoita ndava futi ndoima ndika komiti yawomen affairs rika komiti yawomen affairs rikotoravona gender commission ichikoda ichikothusa ngamanda ichikofundedza vafumakadzi ichirivudza uri navo rine rina kuranga ngapanda rituwe riyoitisa hani ronohumela kadziconstituency dzavo rine ndivo dhakaya varangapanda vama-traditional leaders ndidhoyamba ngauri section yavo ya 281 yayodzula yolamba uri vaite zvapolitics ichivatendera mara uri vatuwe vayovhota saka ndandichikotama uri hava varangapanda vavatu vachivatu vasungojena hezvi zvauri navo nevakwangovidzwa ufi ndivono vamapolitics avaime yenepo ngauri ndivone vanokorikana hunavo khaki hakhakelana vatu vamapati osiyanawo vangasikwanisi uri vari hoyu oluga kana uri hoyu okhaka ngauri vakova vachivoima nawapati yavo saka zvikwine uri vasungodzula vopfi hoyu ndwapati hei haime henepo uchifi ukoimela vatu vothe haikona uri vatu vafiyo ndadova ndaya kauketiwa prosecutor general section 259 yaityori prosecutor general ukoketiwa nga murangapanda wa shango achikotusiwa nga judicial service commission mara zvezvino clause 20 ivorihone president udova achivoketa anti asina mutu anomutusa zvingasichimbiri nga nzira ireyoyoni ngauri hoyu prosecutor general ndiyene anadova achikosedza uri hoyu ukofanira uri atongiwe nga nzira hei saka kana uri onoketiwa nga mutu mutii zvikuva zvisungozichaima nga nzira yavudi ndikoyana kamajudges ndikori na majudges zvazvisatei zvavudi uri anangiwe nga murangapanda wa shango hanangiwe nga vatu samanangelo ovo odzula zvichiiteya ndivo yahapo kahei inopisa ndisanyakujiya chipinga ngauri zodzula vatu vachikoyamba ngayo vatu vanjivonoyambesa ngayo yamurangapanda wa shango nendina muvono wanga ndikovona ropiwa chipinga chauri rimone richikopfa uri vatu vakorimini huna mumwe musadzi otakuwa ari murangapanda hakhethiwe ngapaliamenti murangaphanḓa ha engedziwe ri vhone uri kana a tshi khou khethiwa nga parliament ngauri ri khou ḓivha uri na ma-constituency a 210 zwi ḓo vha hone na uri bulege dzi no pfhi a dzi na vhathu vhanzhi ya wanala hu tshi vho pfhi i na vhathu vhanzhi sa uzumba ndipe example ya uzumba hu na tshifhinga ha pfhi uzumba yo fhiwa vhathu vhanzhi mara hu si na vhathu vhanzhi hu ḓo vha hu si tshena u lila uri zwe zwino ho isiwa vhathu vhanzhi ho khethiwa vhathu vhanzhi vha siho ngauri havha vhathu vha 210 vha hone parliament a huna ano ḓo ri ho itiwa vhutsotsi kana ho itiwa mini nṋe ndi khou guma henefha tshiphanḓa ndo levhuwa.
Thank you so much, Honorable Speaker, Madam. Good afternoon. Thank you. I rise to support the Constitution of Zimbabwe, Amendment Bill number 3 of 2026. In doing so, Honorable Speaker, Madam, I am guided by the extensive consultation conducted throughout the country by the Joint Portfolio Committee, thematic committees of Parliament. This consultation reached all provinces and districts of Zimbabwe, Honorable Speaker, Madam, and received more than 540,000 written submission from citizens of our country. The overwhelming majority of those submissions supported the bill, Honorable Speaker, Madam, demonstrated that the proposed amendment reflects the aspiration of many Zimbabweans who desire stronger institutions, greater stability and acceleration national development. Honorable Speaker, Madam, I particularly support the proposal that the President be elected by the Member of Parliament sitting in joint sessions. This amendment is both constitutional and sound, democratically legitimate. Section 97 of the Constitution already granted Parliament the authority to remove the President from the office. It is therefore logical and constant that the same institution instructed with the removal of president should also possess the authority to elect one. Far from diminishing democracy, this model strengthens representative democracy because members of parliaments are derived from their mandate. They get their mandate direct from the people of Zimbabwe, from their constituents. When parliament elects a president, it does not as the collective, it does as a collective representative of every constituent and every citizen in our nation. Honorable Speaker, Madam, the committee also correctly observed that direct presidential elections have often been associated with significant financial cost, prolonged political contestation, and they should not consume resources that could otherwise be invested in providing the lives of our people. Every dollar saved from reducing cost electoral process can be redirected towards development of our roads, schools, clinics, irrigation schemes, water infrastructure, Honorable Speaker, and disaster preparation programs. As a constituent that experienced the devastation of Cyclone Idai, the people of Chimanimani West, where I come from, understand that development requires resources. Continuity and sustainable implementation will therefore come reforms that allow the government to focus on more full on service delivery, economic transformation than politics. Thank you also, Honorable Speaker, Madam. This proposal is not without precedence. We have countries such as South Africa, Botswana, and others around us successfully elect their president through referendum while maintaining democratic legitimacy. Political stability and constitutional government. Zimbabwe will therefore not be abandoning democracy, but rather adopting a model that has proven effective elsewhere or on our continent. Honorable Speaker, Madam, the fact that citizens elect members of parliament who who then elects the president, ensures that executive authority continue to drive for the people according with their constitution. Honorable Speaker, Madam, I also support the proposal to extend the electoral cycle for the presidential and parliamentary from 5 years to 7 years. Why am I saying this, Honorable Speaker, Madam? The committee observed that major development project requires long periods to reach completion and deliver tangible benefit to our citizens. Development is not achieved through short-term investment. Infrastructure projects, agricultural transformation programs, industrialization initiatives, and climate resilience investment often requires years of planning, fencing and planning before results become visible. Frequently, elections can place government in a perpetual campaign mode. Honorable Speaker, Madam, disrupting policy continuity and diverting attention from development priorities. A 7-year term provides more realistic time frame for government to implement long-term programs while maintaining accountability to the people. Actually, Honorable Speaker, Madam, 7 years is a short period of time. I was also proposing up to 10 years. Honorable Speaker, for the constituency such as Chimanimani West, where continual need to rehabilitate roads, restricting irrigation infrastructure, promote tourism, and improve resilience against natural disaster, policy consistency is essential. Communities benefit when development plans are allowed sufficient to mature and yield meaningful results. Propose extension of electoral cycle, therefore support sustainable development and long-term national planning. Honorable Speaker, Madam, I further welcome the proposal to strengthen the Senate through inclusive of additional members possessing specialist expertise, which are very important in our country, even for any development, wherever they might be. The challenges confronting a modern nation are increasing complexity. Zimbabwe requires the expertise of engineers, economists, agricultural specialists, legal scholars, scientists, environmental experts, and other professionals who can contribute meaningfully to national policy formulation. Honorable Speaker, Madam, by broadening the pool of expertise available within Parliament, this amendment will improve the quality of legislative scrutiny, strengthen evidence and decision making, and ultimately enhance government outcomes. Honorable Speaker, Madam, the committee analyzed especially highlighted the need for stability, policy continuity, institutional efficiency, and development focused government. This amendment seeks to achieve precise those objectives. They provide an opportunity to strengthen democratic institutions, reduce unnecessary expenditure, enhance accountability, improve policy making, and create conditions necessary for sustainable economic growth and national development. Honorable Speaker, Madam, rather than quarrel here most of the time. Honorable Speaker, Madam, in conclusion, for those reasons, on behalf of the people of Chimanimani West, I support the Constitution of Zimbabwe Amendment Bill number 3 of 2026. I saw some video, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Maposa. Honorable G. Mashavave.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am. It is both an honor and privilege to stand before you today to speak about an important bill, a bill that will shape the future of our nation. Madam Speaker, ma'am, and let me start by the issue, the burning issue, the Gender Commission. Madam Speaker, ma'am, from my own analysis, from my own analysis,
May the
the
honorable member be heard in silence, please.
From my own analysis, the bill had no intention to abolish the commission. The idea, from my own perspective, was to house very important commissions under one roof. And the idea, from my own thinking, was the best ever. All maybe I could ask is to fund these commissions. But, Madam Speaker, ma'am, I was privileged to be a member in a joint committee of this bill. And at one time, we had the privilege to analyze the clause by clause and have a comment of the committee. But when we reached the clause of the gender, mira mani. When we arrived at the comment of the gender issue, there was a near fight in the House because it divides the committee into two parts. But may I kindly persuade the House to at least consider the proposal for a while. I think it is the best for the country to move forward. Madam Speaker, ma'am, clause 4, 9, and 10 of the bill aim to substitute the current 5-year cycle to a 7-year term. This proposal, again, is a brilliant piece of legislation, and I'm in full support of it. A 5-year election cycle is uneconomical. The more we rotate these elections in shorter periods, the more we consume our scarce resources, and again, it is time consuming. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I'm more worried about investors, prospecting investors. We have a tendency of waiting for an outcome of an election before they could invest. Hence, the more we rotate these elections, the more we deter them coming to invest. Zimbabwe is not in isolation from this idea. Several countries have similar long-term cycles.
Order, Honorable Mashavari, Honorable Chugumbu. Say murugudaira imi matiko akambodaro ndiani ndakakutarisai tichitsvaga kuti munhu ari kuita noise ndiani makazvipamhiza muri kuenda pansi.
Sorry, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Mashavari, enderai mberi.
Honorable Speaker. Point of order, Honorable Speaker.
Point of order.
Mazvita Honorable Speaker. Takati chikumbira kuti vari kudiviro ngavatendere Honorable vapedze kudhibheta vakanyarara. Isusu tanga takanyarara kunoko. We enjoyed my long lecture. Angasina anything to do with the debate. Ngavanyarare honorable vazvikwe avo.
ichokwadi chamataura kana vanhu vari muimba ino vachinzi mahonorable members vanotarisirwa kuve neunhu hunoenderana nemataito iwawo, saka ndo zvatotarisira. Endererai mberi honorable Mashavari.
Several countries have similar long-term cycles. These include United Kingdom, Italy, Ireland, Cameroon, and many others. This bill was long overdue, and I fully support it. Madam Speaker, ma'am, give me the opportunity to air my view on the traditional leaders. From my own analysis, the bill had no intention to force the traditional leaders to be in politics. The idea was to flexi a rule whereby if a traditional leader feels he wants to participate in politics, let it be and not be a crime. Madam Speaker, ma'am, let me talk about the amendment of 92. Amendment of section 92 of the bill states that the president must be elected by members of parliament in a joint sitting with the senator and the National Assembly. Section 97 of the Zimbabwe Constitution mandated the members of parliament powers to impeach or to remove a president. And for that piece of legislation to be more effective, members of parliament should have the powers to appoint and to fairly to have the powers to remove him. Surely you cannot have the power to remove someone whom you didn't appoint. We elect councillors, and councillors elect mayors. We elect members of parliament, and members of parliament elect the Speaker of the House. United States of America conducts election to choose the electors by state. And these electors from the Electoral College officially elect the president. Other countries like Germany, India, the president is elected by the parliament. And closer to home, Madam Speaker, ma'am, South Africa uses what we call a hybrid system, whereby citizens vote for parliament, and the parliament will elect president from within. On the issue of voters' roll, Madam Speaker, ma'am, I fully support the idea of returning the voters' roll to the registrar for the same reason that the registrar is the custodian of all the documents from birth to death, which will include birth records, birth certificates, IDs, passports, marriage certificates, and a death certificate. Surely, a more updated voters' roll is guaranteed. Madam Speaker, ma'am, Zimbabwe is a sovereign state, and we are the champions of democracy and the masters of our destiny. We decide how we want to run our own country. I am in full support of the bill, so I submit.
Thank you, Honorable Mashavabe. Next to take the floor is Honorable Ara Makumire.
Ndoda kutenda mubato wechigaro nekunipa mukana wekuisa izwi rangu pabhiri iri rachiriridza mukati menyika, ndichiritsoropodza, ndichirishora, ndichiriramba zvakaomarara. Ndinoramba bhiri iri mubato wechigaro nokuti kwandinobva vanhu vechiredzi ndakavabvunza kuti munoti kudini pamusoro pebhiri iri.
Point of order. I'm letting tell you this. Hey,
Honorable members, may we have order in the house? Enderera imbere.
point of order. Point of order.
What is your point of order?
Ndazwa honorable Ropa Makumire vachiti vanhu vechiredzi ngavanyatsotaura kuti chiredzi ipi yacho, yakona chiredzi yose here, nekuti tiripo vamwe kuchiredzi isutu hatina mbomutuma izvozvo.
Order. Order. May we have order in the house? Honorable Makumira, hanzi taurai chiredzi yenyu nokuti machiredzi aya akawanda.
Ndakavabvunza pamusoro pebhiri kuti munorida here
Honorable
bhiri
Makumire,
chiredzi central.
taurai chiredzi yenyu.
Ndiri MP wechiredzi central constituency. Ndakavabvunza kuti bhiri iri munorida here. Ndokubva vati honorable indai pachipatara chechiredzi general hospital ndoona chimiro chiripo mouya totaura nyaya iyi. Ndakaenda pachipatara mubato wechigaro ndikandoongorora ndikaona varwere vachishayiwa mushonga pachipatara. Ndokubva ndataurira vabereki.
Point of order. Point of order.
What is your point of order?
Ndanga ndichikumbira kuti Honorable Makumire vataure zviri mubhiri kwete zvechipatara. Hapana patakambosangana nazvo.
Honorable Makumire, endererai mberi.
Ndokubva ndadzoka kwavari mubato wechigaro ndikavaonesa chimiro chiri muchipatara. Ndokubva vagari vemuchiredzi central vakati zvino kana chipatara chisina mushonga moda kuwedzera 2 years dzokuitei. Ndakabvunza madzimai ndikati madzimai munorida here bhiri iri? Ndokubva madzimai akati tiri kuzvarira pasi muchipatara, hatigoni kuzvarira pasi muchipatara for the next 2 years kuda kuwedzerwa nebhiri iri. Ndakaenda mukamba yemapurisa ndikabvunza mapurisa munorida here bhiri iri? Mapurisa akati mari atiri kuhora ikwani, tariremo neshangu dzedu zvadzakaita. Ndokubva ndatorwa ndikaratidza mahofisi mubato wechigaro.
On a point of order.
Mahofisi anga ari
On a
emapuranga.
point of order.
Order, Honorable Makumire.
Ndokubva vabvunza
On
vakati
a point of
2
order.
years ndedzei tichandira mapuranga.
On a point of order.
Order. What is your point of order?
Mubato wechigaro muno mudare tichitanga basa tinopiga miko yekutaura chokwadi kana tiri muno mudare. Tanga tichizokumbirawo kuti Honorable Makumire vachiremekedza mhiko yavakapika, vachitaurire mapurisa akavaudza kuti mari yavanotambira ishoma. Ndatenda.
Honorable Danzi, zvamataura ndazvinzwa, asi regai ndikupindurei ndichiti zvambotaurwa muno muimba muno kuti vanhu vakanyorera vachisapota kuti vanoda bill vanosvika 537,102. Vanhu vakanyorera vachiti havasi kusapota i2,935. Saka Honorable Makumire nevamwe vavo vashoma ndo vari pa2,000 ipapo.
Point of order.
Endererai mberi Honorable Makumire.
Vanhu vechigaro, ndakatenderera mukati meguta mvura ichishayikwa, vanhu vari kucharika masuweji mukati menzvimbo, vakati 2 years mozida dzei tichigara muchina sezvizvi. Ndakabvunzwa nemauto akati 2 years mozida dzei tichikanga waya sezvizvi. Ndakavabvunza toenderera mberi here kwavamwe makore 2, vakati kuenderera kwenyu makore 2 kuenderera mberi kwenhamo yatiri kusangana nayo. Ruzhinji rweZimbabwe mubati wechigaro ruri kupikisana nebhiri iri nokuda kwekuti harisi bhiri riri kubva kuvanhu. Mubati wechigaro ndoda kuti ndikuonesei kuti bato riri kutonga izvezvi mukati mehurumende yeZimbabwe rakatanga mugore ra1980.
Honorable Makumire, taurai nezvebhiri, hatisi kutaura nezvemapato. Musarasika, makarasika ndokugarisai pasi.
Madam Speaker, ndandichikumbirawo your indulgence kuti nditaurewo point of order. Madam Speaker, we have statistics that you have already mentioned in this House, that the majority, 500,000 plus submissions, supported this bill in 2000. So the honorable member cannot continue to say the majority, because the majority evidence, we have it in this House. Unless he had his own consultations that we were not part of.
Ndizvozvo zvamataura Honorable Government Chief Whip, kutaura vanhu vanosiyana kamashoko, vamwe vanogona kuti majority asingazoti zviri kunyatsorevei kuti majority zvacho. Mashoko anenge achikotaurika endererai mberi Honorable Makumire.
Mubati wechigaro, bhiri iri riri kutsvaga kuwedzera makore 2, asi tikatarisa hurumende iripo iko zvino yakanga iripo kubva gore ra1980 sandaberekwa. Vanhu vari kubvunza kuti mabasa ari kupi? Vechidiki vari kurutairira mumastreets, vari kutaradza nemutorero nokushayiwa mabasa. Vari kubvunza kuti kubva 1980 maiteiko muchikona kugadzira nyika? Zvomoda kuwedzerwa 2 years. Maiteiko kubva November 2017? Almost a decade. Mubati wechigaro, 2 years mozida dzeiko makatadza kugadzira nyika pa 10 years. Ndomubvunzo une vana veZimbabwe mubati wechigaro. Mubati wechigaro, ndoda kuti ndibate nyaya yekuzviwedzera chemu yedu isu vagere pachigaro. Ndoda kuti ndikuonese mubati wechigaro kuti ukama huripo pakati peunovhota.
Regai ndimbokubvunza iwo mubvunzo. Order.
You are there to moderate debate, Madam Speaker, not to question me. Allow me to debate. You are not on the chair to question me. You are there to moderate debate.
Interrogation.
Yes.
ndiri
It's not within your place to interrogate me.
Basi.
Alright, regai ndikubvunzei mubvunzo. Order. Muri kuzviwedzera here kana muri kuchinja election cycle? Muri kuzviwedzera here kana muri kuchinja election?
On a point of order, Madam Speaker. 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 Madam Speaker, when you are seated on that chair, you are chairing Parliament. It is not your prerogative to ask people questions.
Don't lecture the presiding officer.
You don't have.
Handirambidzwe kugaita
No,
munhu
this is
kana
not a, this is his
achirasika.
debate. You should allow him to debate.
Ndimi ndiri kutorasika manje, chitorai chigaro chenyu. Ina handirambidzwe kugaita munhu kana achirasika. Honorable Makumire, enderai mberi.
But when chigaro ndiri kutini, what a point of order, madam. You cannot rise on a point of order, man. But you are ruling up.
But you are ruling, Chairman.
Honorable, mupei mukana aenderere mberi.
Order. Joseph Sagana Gibbs.
But when chigaro, ukama uripo pakati pevanovhota nevanovhoterwa ndokuti isu vanovhoterwa tiri varanda navashandi vevanhu. Zvino mushandi haagoni kuzviwedzera contract kana kuchinja contract pasina wirirano nauyo wakapinza munhu basa. Now panyaya yemubato wechigaro, vanhu vakativhotera ndo vane decision. Vanhu vari muvhotasro yenyika ndo vane decision. Saka nyaya iyi manje inoda kuti iende kureferendum. Haigoni kupedzwa vanhu vasina kuenda kureferendum. Ndoda kutaurirai kudai mubato wechigaro, kana bhiri yakasapotwa ne99% yevanhu, tiri kutyei kuenda kureferendum? Tiri kutyei kudzokera kuvanhu? Tiri kutyei kuenda kune vanhu vakavhota? I know kuti there are some very unpopular members in this house. Vasingadiwi kwavanobva, vasingadiwi kumaprovinsi avanobva, vari kutya kudzokera kuvanhu. Saka tiri kuti isusu bhiri harigoni kuenda mberi risina kuenda kureferendum. Mubato wechigaro, ndoda kubata nyaya yekuti
Point of order.
Zevezai.
Point of order.
Is a point of order.
Maita basa kubata chigaro. Ndokunga honorable member vambokumbirwa kutaura kuti vanobva constituency ipa havana kutaura. Iko zvino vakuti vanhu mahonorable member anotya kudzokera kumaconstituency. Isu takamiririra vanhu. Totya kudzokera vanhu vatakamirira. Ngavasanyebera mahonorable member.
Honorable Makumire, ndambokutaurira kuti taurai zviri mubhiu zvamava kutaura honai vanhu vati tine ukama hwakanaka nevanhu vatinomiririra.
Mubato wechigaro, vanhu vava vachirumbidza mabasa
masarirwa namaminitsi mana.
ndatanga debate na 11 minutes to
11
ndandakaibata 11 minutes to ndandaka debate. And I think the parliament live stream inoratidza maminitsi andadebata. Mubato wechigaro, ndanzwa vamwe vachiti dai tawedzera shumba murambwe mamwe makore maviri vari muhofisi vasvike mugore ra2030.
Point of order.
Kuda kuti ndijekese mubato wechigaro kuti shumba iko zvino vane makore.
Order, Honorable Makumire.
Point of order.
What is the point of order?
Mazvita mubato wechigaro. Nyaya dzatiri kutaura inyaya dzakakosha, honorable speaker. Hatingakanganisi mukana wakadai nevanhu vari kucreata content muno. kubva tichitanga debate ranhasi honorable speaker hapana taura zvokuti shumba murambwi. Honorable Makumire vari kuzwana kuti
Honorable Makumire, mabvunzo anzi ataura kuti shumba murambwi muno ndiani pindura. Endererai mberi basarwana maminitsi maviri.
But wechigaro mukazvitarisa muchaona kuti nyaya yekuti president avhoterwe muno muparliament inyaya yandisingatsigiri mukati mebhiri iri, nokuti ndinonzwisisa mubati wechigaro kuti kuna vanhu vazhinji vakatsakatika muhondo vachifira kodzero kuti vanhu vagose kuvhota. Ndinopikisa this clause mubati wechigaro nokuti kuna vanhu vatinoshayiwa kuti nanhasi tikavabvunza kuti nhai macomrades makafirei, makafira mabhasikoro here, tinobvunza kuti nhai macomrades zvamairwira muhondo magains aya aenda, ndobvunza dai ndaikwanisa kuvaona ndaibvunza comrade Chitepo,
Point of order.
ndaibvunza Jason Mziyababa Moyo,
Point of
makafireiko
order.
nhai macomrades,
Honorable Makumire, what is your
Mafireiko
point of
nenzara,
order,
macomrades?
Honorable Matangiri?
maigarireko mumasango macomrades.
Honorable Makumire.
Point of order.
Point of order. What is your point of order, Honorable Matangiri?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Tikada kucheuka kumashure sezviri kutaurwa naHonorable Makumire, vatengesi ndo vanga vasingadi kuti nyika iuye kuvatema, vawana mukana nhasi kuva MP vakutanga kutaura kuti vakasunungura nyika, ndo vakaramba kuti vatema vatore ivhu vatengesi ava vana Honorable Makumire ava vanotengesa.
On a point of order.
Order, honorable members. Regai vachipedzesa vasarwa neminiti rimwe.
Mubati wechigaro pane nyaya iri kuunza tokusisiti, especially dzakanangana nekusarudza mutungamiriri wenyika. Ndoda kubvunza mubati wechigaro kuti pakaurayiwa Bishop Tafumanei Masai, ndipresident upi wataivhotera? Pakaurayiwa Ndira, ndiani wataivhotera? Ndiani akauraya Chiminya? Ndiani akauraya Keninye?
Time dzenyu dzakwana, Honorable Makumire.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
Matanga na 1645 kutaura. Ndikurekoda. Chiga
stream.
Aiwa, matanga na 1645.
Madam Chair,
Ndikurekoda
we have our stopwatch here.
Chitora chigaro chenyu.
Point of Chair, Madam Chair.
Honorable tafana nazvo.
Point of order.
Point of privilege, Madam Chair.
Point of order.
No, there's a point of privilege here.
Point of order. I move for the extension of time for Honorable Makumire.
I second. Yeah, we second.
Second. Jack.
We second.
I second.
Is there an objection?
No objection.
Zero.
No reason to.
Honorable tafana nazvo.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, ma'am. Madam Speaker, ma'am, let me start by quoting Edmund Baggy from
Point of order, Madam Speaker. Point of order, Madam Speaker. Point of order.
Matama nzvimbo. What is your point of order? Order, Honorable Joe.
Ndida kutenda, Madam Speaker. Nemukaona mandipa kuti ndite point of order. Point of order yangu, Madam Speaker, iri maringe nemafambisirwo ebasa mukati memba ino. Pasimuka honorable Chikombo vachitivo tikumbire kuti vamakumire vawedzerwe nguva.
Zvarambwa nevamwe ndo zviri pamutemo kuti tinobvunza kuti vano vanopokana here.
Andisati ndapedza mubato wechigaro.
Makupedza nguva yahonorable.
Aiwa, handisi kuipedza mubato wechigaro, nguva ndeyedu. Ndoda kuti ini mubato wechigaro. Pasimuka pachikumbirwa kuti tiwedzere nguva dzahonorable makumire. Vamakumire vanga kutaura pfungwa yakakosha kuti vanga vakabatawo time yavo. Last time takanzi isusu nguva dzinobatwa nemaclerks. Saka imimi manga muchibata nguva sani hatichanzwisisa isusu.
Nguva dzinobatwa neni panapa ndinobata nguva. Ava varipo bedzi pakuzondiyeuchidza kana ndapoira. Ndinobata nguva panapa mubva mazviziva kubva nhasi.
Point of privilege, Madam Speaker. Point of privilege.
Madam Speaker, ma'am.
Point of privilege, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, ma'am.
Honorable members, ngatiite zvinoita kuti basa riende mberi.
Yes, point of privilege, Madam Speaker. It's a point of privilege. It
Order,
interrupts
Honorable.
process.
Point of privilege, Honorable Gumbi.
Madam Speaker, muri kukanganisa mafambisirwo ebasa reparliament. Imisa sachigaro wenhaurirano huru iri kuitika muno. Munosungirwa kuchengetedza vatauri. Kumbunyikidza vatauri. Chirungu areka. You allow bet the bill. Then I vibe.
Ndo mafungiro enyu, ndo maonero enyu. Asi ini ndiri kuziva kuti zvandiri kuita ndo zvipamutemo. Ini ndiri kuziva kuti zvandiri kuita ndo zvipamutemo, ndo maonero enyu. Honorable Zhou.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, ma'am. Let me start by quoting Edmund Baggy. Madam Speaker, ma'am, he said, Parliament is not a congress of ambassadors from different and hostile interests, but is a deliberate assembly of one nation with one interest, part of the whole, where not a local purpose, not local prejudice, or to guide by the general good. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I want to congratulate you and Parliament staff the way you conducted CAB3 consultations. I'm an MP since 2013, Madam Speaker, ma'am, and I participated in most of the public hearings for bills in CAB1 and CAB2. Most of these consultations, Madam Speaker, ma'am, were conducted only covering 5 provinces at most, and on CAB3 you made sure that we visit every district in our beautiful country, Zimbabwe, which is unusual, Madam Speaker, ma'am. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I want to associate myself with the report which was presented by the Chairman for Justice Committee, Honorable Zogo. I was in Manicaland, covering Manicaland on the CAB3 consultations. People supported the bill so well and the attendance was so good. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I'm in full support of the bill, and as a representative of Berengwa West constituents, and I'm representing the will of the people in my constituents. Madam Speaker, ma'am.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Order, Honorable Zhou.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Honourable Member
quoted the Manicaland consultations. In my constituency, they were anything but fair. In fact, we have a video stake of one lady speaking, and the and the microphone was taken away from her. It was rigged. It's not a true reflection in the Sukuba Bite Hall. Thank you.
Honorable Joe, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, ma'am. Madam Speaker, ma'am, constitutional amendments reflect a society's capacity to grow. They are powerful tools that allow the law to adapt to the evolving needs and moral standards of the people, proving that a governing document is a living framework rather than a rigid relic. Madam Speaker, ma'am, a constitution is not a mere document in black and white. It is a living document that evolves with the nation. Let me take you back to the Lancaster Constitution that gave birth to our motherland, Zimbabwe. The Constitution was amended 19 times, Madam Speaker, ma'am, from 1980 to 2013, which is 32 years. If you do mathematics, Madam Speaker, ma'am, the Constitution was amended after every 2 years or less. Madam Speaker, ma'am, let me pick some few clauses that I thought I should add my voice. The term extension is not targeting our president, President Mnangagwa, or us as members of parliament, no. The biggest beneficiaries for the CAB3 are the people who are going to win the elections after 2030. The Constitution of Zimbabwe Amendment number 18 Act, which allowed parliamentary and presidential elections to be held concurrently on 29 March 2008, shortened the parliamentary and presidential elections to be held concurrently on 2008, shortened the parliament term. So we're just going to recover the 2 years which were shortchanged when the term was cut by 2 years. The term for members of parliament was supposed to run from 2005 to 2010. The Act also revised the concurrent presidential term from 6 years to 5 years. Let me also touch the clause for the introduction of the Limitation Commission, Madam Speaker, ma'am. I fully support the clause, Madam Speaker, ma'am. We have got a lot of legacy issues from our land reform exercise where the farm boundaries are not known, the chiefs who are like governing their jurisdictions. This creates conflicts between the chiefs in our constituencies. The other challenge that needs to be rectified, we've got chiefs servicing 2 or more constituencies because of the delimitation which was fast-tracked by ZEC. Madam Speaker, ma'am, on Gender Commission, I humbly request the Minister to leave it as it was. We had made some strides in the international community where Zimbabwe was considered as one country already achieved the goals for gender issues. From my own view, we are now retrogressive, Madam Speaker, ma'am, if we disband Gender Commission and we will overburden the Human Rights Commission, which is now dealing with the issues of national peace and reconciliation since from 2023 upon the expiring of the NPRC Act. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I humbly ask our Minister of Justice maybe to just pay the Gender Commission so that we progress in the international community. So I submit, Madam Speaker, ma'am.
Thank you, Honorable Joe. Honorable Nyabani.
Maita basa, Madam Speaker, ma'am. Ndafara nemukana wamandipa kuti ndigotaura kune vanhu vekurushinga vakandipa matemu maviri yokuti ndinge ndiri muno ndichivamiririra. Vanhu vakauya kurushinga, ndanga ndiri kurushinga, vachibvunza kuti toita sei nebhiri iri nyowani ratiri kuda kuuya riite mutemeri. Vanhu vakati vanoda bhiri, wese vakamusungu aingosumudza ruoko ndoda bhiri, aisumudza ruoko. Handina kumboona akati handisuda bhiri. Kana aripo anondiudza kuti aiva kurushinga kwakabuda 0 vanhu vaisapota bhiri. So inini ndinongobva nezvandabva nazvo kurushinga ndoyandotura muno kuti aiva kurushinga kwandinobva uku vanhu vakusapota bhiri.
Rebhonya bani ndoroti mudzokorore pamataura.
Ndatinosapota bhiri pazvese tichita Zimbabwe yese vanhu kurushinga tiri kusapota bhiri, nokuti pawakauya kurushinga wachitsvaga kuti vanhu vari kufungei nezvebhiri, waiti tikuda bhiri wakanga wakawanda kuma 70, waiti hatisi kuda bhiri paka pane 0 kushinga ndisingataurawo kuno kwandisina kuenda.
Point of order.
Order, Honorable Nyabani. What is the point of order?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, ma'am. I think there's a great misconception in terms of the understanding of what a public consultation is supposed to do and what an election is. For the simple basis that there might be a limited number of people who are supporting or not supporting the bill, it is not something that is binding in accordance to our Constitution of Zimbabwe. The election is a determining factor, and that is why some other members of parliament are yearning for a referendum, because it is actual and it reflects quantitatively the number of those who are in support of the bill. You cannot stand up here and say that due to a public consultation you have ruled.
I hear you, Honorable Member.
That is a fact,
but you
Madam
will
Speaker,
have your time to debate. You will have your time to debate.
I'm correcting the perception that is there.
No, I said
there's a difference between a consultation and an election. So you cannot rule out to say that.
Wait for your time. You will have
this
your
is
time
not a debate. I need to correct.
And you will say whatever you want to say. Please, may you take your seat.
It's a fact, Honorable.
Honorable Nyabani, please may you proceed.
Aita basa Madam Speaker nekundidzirira kuti ndirege kurohwa nezvibhagera neumwe wangu, asi ndoda kuti avhure kuna Mark 2 verse 27. Mark 2 verse 27
On a point of order.
Munhu
Point of order, Madam Speaker. Point of order, Madam Speaker.
I have another point of order.
Do you recognize me?
Ingewani takabvumirana kuti mumwe nemumwe anotaura zvaanofunga kutaura. Anenge aine pfungwa dzakasiyana nezvataurwa nemumwe ozowanawo mukana wake wokutaura zvake. Tadi taenderera mberi.
I think the message was directed to me, Honorable Speaker, ma'am. He says I think I should open the Bible to some verses, so that's why I'm also here as a...
You are not supposed to answer him when he is debating.
That's why I raised the point of order, which is allowed by the standing rules and orders of this House.
Speaker, point of order.
Please, may you take your seat. Honorable...
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
What is your point of order?
Madam Speaker, in our standing rules and orders, it is clearly stated that when a member rises on a point of order, they must specifically cite the order that they are referring to. For a constitutional rule that is being breached, for any provision. Now, what we are seeing, Honorable Speaker, is that honorable members are just standing up to disrupt someone who is giving their submission. May this be stopped, Honorable Speaker. Thank you very much.
Your point of order has been noted, Honorable Mutodi. Honorable Nyabani, Please, may you proceed.
Madam Speaker, ndaida kuti ndisati ndaenderera mberi ndaida kuzwa kuti the honorable member here because ndasana kuona
Honorable Nyabani, debate ibill tiende mberi. Debate ibill tiende mberi, Honorable Nyabani. Debate ibill tiende mberi. Debate ibill tiende mberi.
Ndoda kutenda Madam Speaker mem. Mark 2 verse 25 Madam Speaker mem. Kune vanhu vasingaende kuchechi asana kunoende kucheseni kuti 27 inotaura kuti mutemo wakagadzirirwa munhu asi munhu haana kugadzirirwa mutemo. Zvoreva kuti mutemo unogona kuchinjwa at any time nemunhu asi mutemo haugoni kugadzira munhu. Madam Speaker mem, regai ndiende ini ndoda kutaura handisangotaura ndichitaura zvokungotaura zvomhepo. Ndoda kutaura ndichikota macross ndichienda ndichiuta kuti senyika yeZimbabwe hatisi kugara pachitsuwa kana kugara pedu tega. Tinoita yatinoti pachirungu benchmarking. Zvatinoita tinenge tichikopera kudzimwe nyika. Hatingoite zvokungofunga kuti tangoti nhasi taungera zvese zvatoda kutongoita. Ndoda kutaura Madam Speaker mem ndichitaura pa clause 8 inotaura kuti president wachange vachipamhidzira ma 10 senators. Toda kuona kuti zviri kubva papi Madam Speaker mem. Madam Speaker mem kupamhidzwa kuma senators kuchange kuchiitwa pa clause zvinhu zvinotobva zvikutowanikwa kudzimwe nyika dziri kuita saizvozvo. Toona pa clause 15 appointment of judges. Tine nyika dzakafanana North America, nyika dzakafanana nana Latin America, ana France. President vanonominata majudges vachibatsiridzwa ne High Council of the High Court Council of the Judiciary. Madam Speaker mem.
Madam Chair, please protect
Madam Speaker
us.
mem.
We are under siege.
Madam Speaker mem. Dai vanhu kana vasingaziwe ngavateerere. Vasingaziwe ngavaziwe.
Point of order.
Point of order. Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Munotawirirana kuti kana munhu akusunga ichipoint of order anobva ataura nenhamba yacho yemustanding rules and orders kuti according to nhamba yakati.
All right. Rule 65 pamastanding orders. Muno mumba inoi Madam Speaker takuvara nemashoko asiri echokwadi muchidimbu kunyeperwa. Hakuna nyika inonzi North America maita basa.
Ari kutaura handisi kumuona ini. Ndiani ari kutaura?
Kwanzi nyika dzeNorth America nenyika dzeLatin America.
Madam Speaker mem, tikaenda panhau yatiri kutaura panapa yema-traditional leaders clause 21 tinenge tichitarisa tikataurisa vana Eswatini kune making. Tikada kutaura ngatitaurei kuti 1884 kwanga kusina mapresidents vachitonga vachirwiswa kuna vanga vari madzishe madzimambo. 1884. 1884.
Honorable Nyabani, Honorable Nyabani, dibetai musingadayire zvitaurwa nevanhu.
Vakauya varungu vachiuya muno vakaona madzishe ndoirwisana nawo. Madzishe ndowaitonga pasi. So nhasi tozotaura kuti madzishe havafaniri kunge vachiita zvematongerwo enyika sei kana iwo madzishe ndoyaitonga panguva iyoyo. So isu tiri kutaura kuti madzishe ndowagara vari varidzi wenyika. Saka madzishe vanofanira kupinda muzvematongerwo enyika. nokuti vakatorwisana nevarungu vachida kuedza kuvharidza kuti wapambe pfungwa varege kupamba nyika ino. So ini ndinoti madzishe vanofanira kunge vachipira zvomatongerwo enyika, tichiona kunana Eswatini, kunana King Mswati vari kutonga ikoko. Madam Speaker mem, tine nyaya yemakore 7 yokuwandudzwa kwemakore kuti asvike pa7 kubva pa5. Haizi Zimbabwe chete, tine nyika dzakafanana dzemuAfrica dzakafanana ana Burundi vane 7 term, tine nyika ana Cameroon ane 7 term, ana Equatorial Guinea ane 7 term. Asi zvokungoti zvangonyuka kunge howa muZimbabwe tokoti haiwa zvinhu zvikutoitwawo nedzimwe nyika. So isusu tinenge tichiona kuti zvakanakira chii, tinokoperawo senyika seZimbabwe zvakanakira kuti ikwanise kufambawo nomupamwe chete. Madam Speaker mem, tozoona panhau yekuti president anenge achizosarudzwa neparliament. Hazvisi zvokuti zvinhu zvekuti zvikungomunyuka muZimbabwe. Madam Speaker mem, tine nyika dzakafanana naBotswana nana South Africa, ana Italy, ana Germany, ana Greece. Hakuvhotiwa inonzi direct, kune ma-indirect inonzi indirect vote. So imimi kana musingazivi zvikunana Greece, musingazivi zvikunana Italy, zvinokuitirai zvinyowani kuvhunduka, munovhunduka. Musavhunduke nokuti hazvisi zeZimbabwe chete. Werengai muone kuti zviri kuitika kunyika dzipi, motora useza kuti muzive kuti aiwa haisi nyika Zimbabwe. Moona kuti kwazviri kuitwa kuAmerica, kuGreece ikoko zviri kuitwa sei, ndozvamufanira kukopera izvozvo. Pazviri kuitwa kuItaly ikoko zviri kuitwa sei, mukopera izvozvo. Kwete kungoshora musati maita, musamedze musati matsenga. Madam Speaker mem, ndoda kutaura kuti bhiru iri kana kuti mutemo uyu hauzi kugadzirirwa ZANU-PF, ukugadzirirwa mutemo wehurumende. Nokuti mutemo wamukutaura wa2013 wacho vakatopaswa nakuma-MP vakaenda. Imwe mutemo yataishandisa before 2013 yakatiitwa nakuma-MP akaenda. So isusu sema-MPs tiripo muno kupinda muno tichipenengura tichiwerengawo nemabhiri kuti ndedzipi dzimwe nyika dziri kuenderana nezvatiri kutaura kuti tienderera tichi zvino tichifamba toona kuti 5 years dzakatinakira chii, 7 years dzakatinakira chii. Kwete kungoti wopinda muno uchingaita noise uchiita noise.
Order Honorable Nyabani, engineer hatitarisire munhu akadzidza zvokuita engineer kungodaira kana ari muParliament.
Ndine urombo. Madam Speaker mem,
endererai mberi Honorable Nyabani.
Pane zvinhu zvakawanda Madam Speaker mem, zvakanzi izvo fupa rakaenda naJesu ranga risingaoni rakasvinudzwa naJesu rakanzi riri kuona chii, zvikanzi ndiri kuona kuti kutenderera, akabva azobatwa futi akabva. Pane vamwe vanhu vane maziso asi havazi kuona, havazi kuudzwa kana kuverenga kuti kwatova nemacancer screening machine akauya nemarimwe zuva takazviverenga zviriko. Havazi kuona kuti kune zvipatara zviri kuwandudzwa, havazi kuona kuti kune marodzi akugadzirwa, havazi kuona kuti izvi zvakawanda zviri kuitika, asi vane maziso asi havaoni. Madam Speaker mem, ndoda kupedzisa nevhesi riri mubhaibheri, shoko raMwari.
Hallelujah.
Kuna Mark 16 verse 19 kwanzi chasungwa pasi kana kudenga chasungwa.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable Nyabani, Honorable James, please may you
Thank you,
allow
Madam
him
Speaker.
to
All I want to
finish.
say is
He's
apparently God is in it again.
Honorable James, I'm talking to you. I'm saying he's about to finish. Please may you allow him to finish. Honorable Nyabani, please may you proceed.
Anonzwa shona here nganyara ru. Unonzwa shona here.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Point of order, Madam
On
Speaker.
a point of order, Madam Speaker. On a point of order, Madam Speaker. On a point of order, Madam Speaker. On a point of order, Madam Speaker.
Mark
On a
16
point of
verse
order, Madam
19.
Speaker.
Mark 16 verse 19.
On a point of order, Madam Speaker.
Mark 16 verse 19. Inoti
On a point of order, Madam Speaker.
mutemo yabvumiwa pa kushinga nepasi rese zvoroti kana kudenga
On a point of order, Madam Speaker. On a point of order, Madam Speaker.
What is your point of order?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are setting a very wrong precedent in this parliament. Other members of parliament are debating and insulting people. Honorable Nyabani has just insulted Honorable James, and we cannot allow that to pass. Parliament is a civil institution. We cannot have people throwing insults on other members of parliament. That cannot be allowed, Madam Speaker. You have to rule on that one.
I hear you, Honorable. Honorable Nyabani just said he doesn't understand Ishona, so why is he raising a point of order?
Yenu Nyabani yeziskiwa yini.
Is that insulting? So,
Madam Speaker, it's an insult. Madam Speaker, if it was coming from Honorable James, it was going to be an insult and racist. And Honorable Nyabani,
I hear you, Honorable.
and you have to rule on that, Madam Speaker. He has to withdraw.
I hear you, take a seat. Honorable Nyabani.
Madam Speaker, a simple apology would suffice.
Order, honorable members. All right, tova mirira vadzoke. Honorable P. Chitimbe.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, ma'am. I rise to contribute on the debate on the CAB3. Honorable Speaker, I support the proposed extension of term of the office of President, members of Parliament and councillors by 2 years. However, my support is based on the expectation that additional period will be used to strengthen democratic governance, improve service delivery, and address the concerns of people of Zimbabwe. The additional 2 years will also provide continuity in the implementation of national development programs and allow ongoing projects to be completed without disruption. The people of Zimbabwe must see tangible benefits from any extension of terms like the presidential ball scheme which we witnessed in Budiro North, Marondera, and recently in Blawayo, spearheaded by the presidential advisor. The proposed extension must also be used to promote equal opportunities for women, youth, persons with disabilities, so that no one is left behind in the development of our nation. Honorable Speaker, I also support the transfer of voter registration and maintenance of the voters' roll to the Registrar General. The Registrar General already manages birth certificates, death certificates, and national identity records, making the office well placed to maintain an accurate, updated voters' roll. However, before this transfer is fully implemented, the Registrar General must address the challenges many citizens face in obtaining birth certificates and national identity documents. Without these documents, the citizens cannot register to vote or fully participate in national affairs. Government services must be decentralized and brought closer to the people so that every citizen can easily access the documents they require. No citizen of Zimbabwe should be required to travel unreasonable distances to obtain identification documents. Honorable Speaker, I oppose the proposal to allow traditional leaders to participate in partisan politics. Traditional leaders play an important role in ensuring that government assistance reaches communities, resolving disputes, administering justice, and maintaining peace within the society. To perform these duties effectively, they must remain impartial and serve all citizens equally. If traditional leaders become involved in partisan politics, people may begin to view them as favoring one political party over other. Furthermore, a person who contests an election against a traditional leader may find it difficult to continue recognizing that leader's authority after a political contest. This may create divisions within communities and undermine the dignity, respect, and neutrality traditionally associated with traditional leadership. Traditional leaders are custodians of our culture, customs, and traditions, and their authority is best protected when they remain non-partisan. Honorable Speaker, I also oppose the abolition of Zimbabwe Gender Commission. Zimbabwe is one of the countries recognized internationally for promoting and protecting the rights of women and girls. Gender equality remains a specialized issue that requires a dedicated institution with a clear mandate. The Zimbabwe Gender Commission plays an important role in promoting equality, investigating gender-related complaints, combating discrimination, and protecting vulnerable groups. It also helps Zimbabwe to fulfill its international obligations under Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW. The Commission has handled numerous complaints, conducted important investigations, and contributed to policies that protect women, girls, men, and boys. For these reasons, I believe the Zimbabwe Gender Commission should remain an independent constitutional body. Honorable Speaker, while I support the extension of terms of office and transfer of voters registering to the Register General, I remain opposed to the abolition of Zimbabwe Gender Commission. I therefore urge this House to adopt reforms that strengthen democracy, protect our institutions, and improve the lives of the people of Zimbabwe. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Chitimbe. Honorable O Murambiwa.
Maita basa mubati wechigaro mubati wechigaro regai ndikuswedzei maswera sei mubati wechigaro regai ndikutendei nenguva yamandipa kuti nditaure mashoko angu mashomanene pamusoro peCAB3 iri mudariro muimba ino. Madam Speaker, ine ndichitaura kudai ndiri kutaura ndakamiririra vanhu vakandituma kuno, vanhu veZaka North constituency. Madam Speaker, pakaitwa public hearing kuZaka, ndaivapo payakaitwa kwaRudhanda, paiva nevanhu vanodarika 2000. Asi pavanhu vose vakataura, Madam Speaker, vanhu vazhinji vaivapo vakataura vachitsigira bhiri ratiinaro nhasi. Saka ndokubva vati aiwa honorable, zvatanga tichitaura papublic hearing apa mazvinzwa, kana makuenda kuparliament chiregai kundotirasisa ikoko. Saka ini ndichiuya munomu ndauya kuti ndizonyatsa kutura mashoko evanhu vandinomiririra vokuZaka North constituency. Madam Speaker, chinangwa chebhiri redu iri kana takazvitarisa ndechebudiriro yenyika yeZimbabwe. Chinangwa chebhiri iri hachipo pakuputsa development iri kuitika muno munyika yeZimbabwe. Saka taona kuti mafambiro ari kuita development ndo aita kuti vanhu vari kuZaka North vandomiririra vanditume kuno kuti ndiuye ndizotsigira bhiri iri. Mukaona munhu anenge achivenga bhiri iri munhu asingadi development, Madam Speaker. Regai ndipe mufananidzo wokuti, Madam Speaker, kana ukaona waramba mukadzi, hakuna murume anofarira kuona mukadzi waaramba achibudirira. Saka nokuda kwayo saka Madam Speaker, vanhu vakakonzeresa kuti nyika ino irohwe namasanctions havangafari kuona nyika ino yeZimbabwe ichibudirira. Vanoti ade yaramba iri pasi. Madam Speaker, regai ndinde kusarudzo yomutungamiri wenyika iri kutaurwa mubhiri muno kuti aiwa inofanira kuitwa.
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Members of Parliament.
Order, Honorable. What's your point of order, Honorable?
Okay, Madam Speaker. The Honorable Member must clearly define to us, because there are so many people who brought their submissions against this bill, including the war veterans. Is he saying the war veterans brought sanctions? What is he trying to say? He has to clarify on that point.
You are out of order, Honorable. May you allow Honorable Member to debate freely.
Maita basa, Madam Speaker. Ndangandapa nyaya yokusarudzwa kwomutungamiri wenyika iri kutaurwa mubhiri ratinaro nhasi uno. Isisu takasarudziwa kumirira vanhu. Saka vanhu vatiri kumirira kumusha ndo vakaita kuti tiuye kuno kuParliament. Saka vanhu vari kumusha pane zvinhu zvavakaona zvavanotituma tichiuya nazvo tichitaura kuno. Saka vanhu vari kumusha vakati, Honorable, takakutumai kuti indai mundotaura kuti hakuna network kuno. Tikaona mabase stations achisiwa, rimwe rakaiswa paJijidza muward 12, rimwe rikaiswa paNdanga muward 3, rimwe rikaiswa riri kutoiswa kwaGumbo izvezvi kuward 4. Saka ndiri kuZaka North vanhu voti tikakutuma imi MP muri kundotaura kuParliament. Vakandituma zvakare ndikauya ndikataura kuti bridge rakainda kuward 1 izvezvi riri kugadzirwa raakutopera. Vakandituma vakati muZaka North zvikoro zvishoma ikeno kuri kuvakwa Gosha Primary School kuward 12, kuri kuvakwa Chigwagwa School kuward 4, kuri kuvakwa Mukwirimba Secondary kuward 5, kuri kuvakwa Chiteva Primary kuward 6. Vakati kana MP tichikutumai muchikwanisa kundotaura zvinhu izvi kuParliament kuti mirira zvizere naizvezvo chitimiririrai pakusarudza president wenyika ino nokuti munotimirira zvizere.
What's your point of order, Honorable Makumere?
Vari kutaura zviri pakurozani izvi. Zviri pakurozani.
Honorable Makumere, itai order.
Ikurozani.
Madibeta imi mabvunzwa nani kuti muri kutaura zviri pakurozani. Allow Honorable Member to be heard. Order, Honorable Makumere. Honorable Makumere.
Maita basa mubati wechigaro nokundi vikirira kuzvibhakira zvangazouya kubva kuno umwe wangu. Regai nditaure Madam Speaker panyaya ye-election cycle kubva pa5 years tichienda pa7 years. Nyaya iripo, Madam Speaker, handi iri kuitirwa vanhu vari muno pedzi apa kana iri kuitirwa mutungamiri wenyika aripo izvozvo. Ndinoona vanhu vazhinji vakataura nezvazvo. Saka ini ndobva ndaona kuti izvi zvakambainakisa izvi. Vanhu veZaka vakaona kuti zvakanakisa izvi nokuti zvinopa mukana kune vaye vachada kuzopinda vachitodzidza izvi vanenge vachidzidza pane dzimwe 2 years kuti